Do you think, or would you even want to see Christian Pulisic as a false nine or anybody else? Because what's interesting is if you put a Pulisic there, who has shown he can do it. He already did it against Real Madrid in the Champions League semifinals last year, where he got in behind the defense. He has some very well-timed runs, and I actually was pretty impressed with him as he scored in that game too. Now, that's an option. And then you could bring in a Gio Reyna and Brendan Aronson could all be on the field at the same time, or a Timo Weah, or I don't. De La Fuente is not even part of the picture anymore. It doesn't feel like it. You know, we have, it gives us a kind of a different look. And you got Musa and McKennie kind of joining the attack. And now we got a front 5 or 6. It's super dynamic. Is that something you would consider, Heath Pearce, and everybody else that's listening or watching?
It's hard. I mean, I like, look, my biggest problem with Pulisic anyway is how far he drifts back. Now, I'm fine with him playing as a false nine. I'm okay with that. But you need to have some verticality from the players around you. Now, Brendan Aronson can stretch a team behind, but Brendan Aronson also likes to be drifting into the pockets or the half spaces. And so you're going to get a very crowded area. And we already struggle enough trying to break down a low block against teams that I just wonder if we have everybody drifting back and we don't have enough players with that intelligence and that final ball. You know, if you look at the way Man City break down teams, and now I'm talking about the U.S. men's national team in context to Man City, which is great. Great. I can't wait to get crushed for this one. But those abilities, I mean, listen, when you think about Kun Aguero and those little tiny darting runs of like 3-4 yard sprints where it's just these little tiny movements and the quality of that passing that you have to have if you're going to play against teams in a low block and you have a false nine in that system, you've got to be very, very good, very patient on the ball, but you have to have ideas. You have to have courage. You also have to have a good pressing game. I'm talking about all these factors that don't have anything to do with just Christian Pulisic alone, but him being there means that all of the other pieces around him have to be just a step higher or better or more dynamic than I think we currently have them. That's at least my take on that. And then he's going to end up drifting back, and then all of a sudden we've got a whole bunch of midfielders on the field.
No, that's a good point, and I appreciate that. With regard to your comparison to Manchester City, I don't have any problem when we compare the U.S. or an MLS team to a big club or whatever it is, because we know that everybody has somewhat of a familiarity with that big club. If all of a sudden he's like, they're playing like Feyenoord in the Eredivisie, you'd be like, I don't know anything about Feyenoord, so what the hell are you talking about? So we have to give those comparisons because I think it's important that there are some similarities, of course, to how certain players move and obviously the systems that we're trying to play that replicate some of the success that the big clubs are having. So the haters can just quiet down a little bit with regard to the comparisons. With regard to Christian Pulisic, I like that we have that as a potential option. We still haven't talked about really at length about Serginho Dest playing a little bit higher up the field too, because he's shown to have some pretty good quality when he's also another player playing with confidence and is healthy and knows that he's got the belief of the coach behind him. I don't think he's in that particular position at the moment, and I think he's been struggling with it since then. But there is something I like about it, and we've seen some sample sizes, and we've seen Tuchel use and utilize Pulisic in a way that makes his darting runs. And I look back at the Real Madrid game that they played in the semifinal away from home, and he scored the first goal. He got in behind the defense, and he wasn't dropping back in so much. And I feel like maybe when he represents our country, he feels like he's got to do more than he should. Whereas when he's with Chelsea, and you've done this before, right? When you play with the national team or maybe even with your club, maybe it's the opposite, where you try to do too much for your club because you just came from the national team. But for whatever reason, it just feels like Christian is trying to do too much, maybe because he feels like he has to, because of all the hype around him or whatever. Whereas with Chelsea, he's just one of 15 players that gets about the same amount of hype, you know? And so there's a little bit more of a comfort level knowing that he doesn't have to do everything. If the team doesn't do well, it's not all on his shoulders. And maybe he feels that responsibility with the US and tries to do a little bit too much. But if Gregg could say, hey, listen, we just need you to make those darting runs to kind of go from inside to out, pull some center backs out of space, then we can run the McKennies through. We can run the Weahs and potential Aronsons or Reyna through and try to create that. Because what's interesting when you say about Brendan Aronson making those runs, he does it from deeper. So he's going from inside to out, which I think impacts the outside back a little bit more. Maybe it pulls the center back. But if you had someone who's as shifty and quick as these players are, if you could have them start between the two center backs and then try to get in behind them or pull them wide, that's just something to consider, which I don't think is a bad option. Obviously, I'd rather have a proper number 9 for these guys to run off of. But just in terms of having this hypothetical conversation, I find it interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and again, not to go too deep into the tactics, but let's put this into context. And I want everybody else's take on this too. The next games are home against El Salvador, right? Away to Canada, home against Honduras. We talk about this being 7 to 9 points, pretty much sets you up to qualify for the World Cup. So in that first game against El Salvador, a team that they should definitely beat at home,
who are going to be sitting in a low block, by the way.
Yeah, of course they are. And they're going to defend like hell. They are going to make it miserable for the US team to try to break them down. I mean, who do you go with in the context of that? I mean, we talked about it before. Ricardo Pepi in the low block means he doesn't get a lot of touches. So that means he's got to finish his chance. Christian Pulisic's going to go looking for a ball. Is somebody going to go in to fill in that space? I mean, if you had to have your front three, or give me your attacking four against El Salvador, that not necessarily who you think Gregg's going to put out, but who do you think has the best chance of breaking down a low block playing at home to get the result?
Well, if we're trying to do it like we did against Bosnia, which is just play around the edges the whole time and never actually take a risk and whip a ball in until we did at the very end, and that led to a goal. Yeah, then yeah, if you're going to do that and that's how you feel like you're going to break them down and try to create these really pretty 1-2s in and around the outside backs to hit hard low crosses, we don't necessarily need a big guy, right? If that's your tactic, and maybe having a Pulisic and an Aronson and a Reina and a Wea and all these guys that are good in those 1v1 situations and maybe can create a little bit from a little bit, or create a lot from a little bit of space, then I don't know if you need a Pepi out there to the points that you made. But if you've got a sense that, all right, we need to get in an area where we're crossing from deep, we're trying to create chaos inside their box, and we're going to whip balls in early, then I think you have to have a bigger body out there. So that could be Pepi, who could lay it off. You could be two strikers. That'll never happen, but I think you and I are dreaming that maybe one day that does. And then you have two big boys out there, or one big boy out there that's knocking things down, and then we have everybody else kind of crashing that second ball and trying to create opportunities off of that. It just kind of depends on how you think El Salvador is going to set up and what you want to do as a team. And if it's trying to be pretty and playing aesthetically pleasing, then I think there'd be some value in having a false nine with one of our more often not considered a winger per se. But it's going to be a long night for whoever plays that 9 spot, whether it's a false 9 or a Pepi. When you have 8 or 9 El Salvadorans sitting right on top of the box, it's not going to be a pretty game, and we're going to have a lot of possession. My fear is, and Canada did it very well when we played Canada at home, you get hit on the counter. Now, El Salvador doesn't have an Alphonso Davies, but we have shown that we can be vulnerable on the counter at times. Even against Bosnia, when they had 10 men, there were some 2v2 and 3v3 situations with experienced players on the field. It's not like they're the young guys. It was Acosta and Roldan and Zimmerman, right? These are the guys. And we were still getting countered. So a better team might have made us pay for that type of stuff. So these are the things we have to think about. But I'm all for just having that urgency right from the get-go and not trying to feel the game out. Let's go set the tone right away.
I fully agree. And, in terms of a front four, when we talk about Bosnia, we actually created numerical advantages and overloads on the side that, the in, back, and through opportunities like that. But against an El Salvador that may be even deeper, it's hard to find those spaces, right? You're going to have to be able to probe teams and really pulse teams in and out of those spaces that are going to really take chances, because they're going to be like, all right, sit in our 2 deep blocks. You can hit it from 30 yards. You're not scoring against us with that. Maybe on a deflection, maybe if you keep on trying, but we're going to frustrate you. And then eventually you're going to feel like the answer to your problems, like you said, is to send an extra number or 2 forward. And that's when we're going to counterattack on you and humble you on a counterattack when you're vulnerable. And so I worry about that regardless of who we have on the field. Just generally, I think we really struggle to break down a low block. But whether that's Pulisic or it's Pifak or it's Ricardo Pepi, I'm not sure what the right answer is. I don't think it's Christian Pulisic, because I think the more you can feed Pepi underneath and Pulisic can come up facing the field and getting the ball at his feet, driving at the game, I think we're in a better place, similar to what we saw against Honduras, as opposed to Christian Pulisic drifting back with his back to the game. I think is not where we want Christian Pulisic.